Ferrari at breakfast on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
10 to 8 is the time. I remind you, Dame Cressida Dick here taking your calls right after 8. But let's go into what is certainly on the news agenda, one of the big stories of the day. Around 500,000 young people getting their GCSE grades. And as I said a couple of days ago, while there is a conversation for the grown-ups to have about the merit of the exams, let's celebrate the success of these young people. They have put in years of studies. Don't rain on their parade. They can only get the grades that they're given, the work they've put in. So good luck to you all as you're waiting for your mobile phones to ping, or however it's done in these days. You certainly don't get a letter in the post as it was for me. I did something called O-Level. You've never even heard of them, but that's for now. Let's talk about this then, and the projection, or the possibility, I should say, the report that there could be 1 in 3 GCSE entries getting the top grades. Let's put that to Conservative MP and Schools Minister Nick Gibb, who joins me now. Do you recognise that figure, Minister? Good morning.
Good morning, Nick. Well, I can't really talk about those figures until 9:30 when the statistics are released. But what I do agree with, Nick, is your comment about congratulating the hundreds of thousands of young people in picking up their grades today. It has been a very difficult 18 months for those young people, but this is the culmination of 11 years of solid work. And I hope all those young people can move on to the next phase of their education, whether that's the new T levels or A levels or an apprenticeship. So good luck to everybody today. And thank you to the teachers, by the way, who have worked so hard and tirelessly in putting those grades together and providing the evidence to the exam boards for those grades.
I think it's fair to say never has the field of education seen such disruption since the days of World War II. So credit to everyone involved, the teachers, other school staff and the pupils, and good luck to them. But there's also a suggestion, and well said, Minister, but there's also a suggestion we might need a new top grade of 10. Do you recognise that figure?
Well, in the longer term, we want to get back to the system we had before COVID, where there wasn't the variation between years in the grades. And we will be looking for the longer term about how we restore that for the future. But for 2022, where there will be exams, we've already announced the changes, the adjustments to those exams to make them fairer for young people who've had a disruption. And we'll be saying more in the autumn about what the grading standard will be, and that's a matter for the regulator Ofqual. But in terms of 2022, we won't be changing any of the grading nomenclature, if you like, but we are looking in the longer term about how we get back to the system we had before the pandemic.
The next year's GCSE pupils, that is to say year 11s, they will sit end-of-year they will sit GCSE exams, will they, Minister?
Yes, they will. That's certainly the plan. We will, of course, be working on a contingency plan in case things go wrong. But the plan now is that they will be sitting the exams. Exams are the fairest method of assessing young people. But we want to get back to normal. We want to get back to the system where we were closing the attainment gap between young people from disadvantaged backgrounds, and as we had achieved before. We had the pandemic. We closed the attainment gap by 13% in primary, 9% in secondary. We want to get back to that system.
Allowing that when I sat my exams as a 16-year-old, GCSEs hadn't even been thought of. They were O-levels, and we had a grading A through E. What is a 9 today in old money, as it were? What is a 9 equivalent to?
Well, when we introduced the new numeric system, the 7 was equivalent to an A, and then we had a differentiation between 7, 8 and 9 based on complicated formula. That 9 was the very top grade, 8 was the next grade, but 7 was linked to the old A grade on the old GCSEs.
So how would we make room if you have a 10? That would mean 7, 8, 9 and 10 were all A's or A stars. Is that right? In the numeric?
Well, you are speculating on the very kinds of very challenging
That's what I'm
issues
paid to do, Mr. Gibb. You know that.
Yes, that the regulator and the department will be grappling with in the long term. But the key thing is for 2022, it'll be the same grading system, but the standard of those grades are something that the regulator will be announcing on in the autumn.
So what's a B? 6.
That's correct. But the actual linkage when we went from numeric to new numbers was at 4. That was linked to a C, and then there's a numeric gradation.
Hang on. If 6 is B and 4 is C, what the hell is 5?
Well, this is why there wasn't a direct link of 5 and 6.
Why
the
did
link
we do
was
this?
4.
Wasn't it easier in the old days?
Say that again, Nick.
Wasn't it a little easier in the old days, Nick, in all honesty?
Well, what you're talking about is the transition from letters to numbers, and it was a complicated transition. But that was that was a couple of years ago. And when if you do have a transition, then it happens over a number of years.
Are you confident that these, whatever works, whatever reviews or whatever work is done, will restore the robustness and tackle inflation? Because that is obviously the problem that you and your colleagues have, and that you want to help these mostly young people with. You want their GCSEs and, of course, subsequent their A-levels to have real growing value.
Yes, of course, we want to get back to the position that we had before the pandemic, where year on year you didn't see big variations in the grades awarded, and we want to get back to that in the long term. But what does matter in the medium term is that there's fairness. So any changes have to be fair between different year groups, and that's something that we will make sure happens. And in 2022 we will have exams, but there will be adjustments made, more optionality, more advance notice, more exam A's, to make sure that the exams next year are fair, given the disruption that this current year, year 10s and year 12s have suffered, as well as the current year 11s and year 13s.
All right. You and I are clearly on the same page about the young people getting their GCSE grades. I sense you'd say the same about the A-level grades. These young people, mostly young people, are to be celebrated for the work that they put in, and well done. But have to refer back to a couple of days. Does the A-level need some kind of review to restore its robustness, Minister?
Well, again, those are issues that we will be looking at in the longer run to make sure we do get back to the system we had before we had the pandemic. But again, we have to make sure that there's fairness in any transition, and those are the very challenging issues that we'll be grappling with. What matters now is making sure that young people can transition to the next phase of their education. That's been our focus, but we will be saying more about the grading system both for 2022. And for the future years in due course.
Last couple of questions. I asked your colleague Gavin Williamson if he could recall his A-level grades a couple of days ago. I'm not going to ask you to recall your GCSE or O-level grades, but you remember your A-level grades, don't you, Minister?
I do, yes, Nick, yes.
And what were they, sir?
Well, you seem insisting on embarrassing me. I got 4 grade A's, and so I was very pleased. I was able to get into my university of choice, as Gavin did. Gavin was delighted by his results. He managed to get into
Has he
Bradford
told you
University.
what he got?
No, he's not told me what he's got. These are private matters, ultimately. Nick.
OK, and there are headlines suggesting that you might be losing your colleague, Gavin Williamson. He's on his way out. He's lost the confidence of Prime Minister Boris Johnson. A quick word on that, if you would, Mr Gibb.
Well, this is all press speculation. I know the media loves to talk about these parlour games. I've worked with Gavin Williamson for the last 2 years. He's a very effective Secretary of State. He's presided over making sure that young people can transition during the pandemic, that they won't suffer long-term damage to their prospects as a consequence of the pandemic. And he's very geared to making sure we continue our reform programme, closing that attainment gap between children from disadvantaged backgrounds and their peers. And that's what drives Gavin Williamson and me in the Department for Education every day.
Grateful for your time, Nick. Thank you. Nick Gibb, Schools Minister, appearing here on LBC, where we're going to take an early news bulletin ahead of Dame Cressida Dick appearing here to take your calls. Just coming up to 8 o'clock, news on LBC.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.